The Allen Line Company thanks all the hard-working drivers who are moving goods across the country. We can't do it without you.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The OOIDA Foundation is out with the results of two new surveys, one on detention time, the other on freight rates. Andrew King, Assistant Director of the OOIDA Foundation, stops by to discuss the topic. The final push to keep FMCSA from imposing a speed limiter mandate has begun. We'll get an update on that and more from Jami Jones and Mark Schremmer of Landline Magazine. And finally, do you view trucking as a job or a career? Marty Ellis has seen both kinds of truckers, and he has a few thoughts on the topic. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is expressing support for a new bipartisan bill aimed at protecting small businesses from burdensome regulations. H.R. 7198, otherwise known as the Prove It Act, would force federal agencies to consider how regulations would affect small businesses. That would be done in a number of ways. That includes creating a way for small businesses to raise concerns when regulators do not consider both the direct and indirect costs their regulations place on them, and stipulating that if regulators don't comply with the review process, small businesses will be exempt from the agency's regulations altogether. Although the bipartisan bill applies to all industries, it is especially significant to trucking, as the majority of trucks are operated by small motor carriers. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration plans to renew an exemption for auto haulers that's been in place for several years. Since 2019, the agency has allowed car haulers to drive Stinger steer transporter equipment without warning flags on overhanging loads. Citing no known safety incidents caused by the exemption, FMCSA this week announced plans to extend it for another 5 years. A provisional renewal that runs for 6 months comes first. In the meantime, FMCSA is accepting comments through March 22nd on the exemption. After that, officials will review the feedback and decide whether to formally adopt the 5-year extension into 2029. Meanwhile, FMCSA has granted Hawaii a limited exemption from parts of its commercial driver's license skills test. The state asked for the exemption last year for 2 islands in particular, Lanai and Molokai, due to a lack of infrastructure. State officials said, and FMCSA has agreed, that the 2 islands don't have the highway infrastructure to support a demonstration of certain on-road safe driving skills required by the CDL skills test requirements. The exemption applies only to CDL applicants taking the skills test on the islands of Lanai and Molokai. It also states those drivers can only operate a commercial motor vehicle on those 2 islands. FMCSA received 0 comments in opposition to the exemption, which took effect this week and runs through February of 2026. A Senate committee will once again take up the nomination of Julie Su for Labor Secretary. A hearing and vote are scheduled for this coming Tuesday, February 27th, within the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee. It's the same committee that advanced her nomination last year along a 11-10 party line vote. Since Su has already testified before that committee, she won't need to again. Acting Secretary Su was first nominated for the full-time gig a year ago and went through a confirmation hearing in April, but her bid did not come up for a vote in the full Senate, which sent her nomination back to the White House late last year. She faces quite a bit of resistance in the Senate. Much of that opposition stems from Su's role in the implementation of California's Assembly Bill 5, a controversial law that makes it extremely difficult for a worker to be considered an independent contractor. A streak of nearly 3 years of continuous growth in cross-border freight hauled by trucks has come to an end. According to the latest numbers from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, truck freight valued at more than $73 billion was hauled across the borders in December. That's a decrease of nearly 11% from November and a decline of nearly 1% compared to December of 2022. The last time trucking cross-border freight experienced a year-to-year decrease was in early 2021. 33 months of increases followed until December. Cross-border freight hauled by trucks across the U.S. northern border rose by more than 1% compared to December of 2022. At the southern border, the value of freight decreased by 2.5%. U.S. border officials in Texas are touting a massive drug bust. In fact, they're saying it was the largest ever drug seizure at a port of entry. We're talking more than 13,000 pounds of meth worth an estimated $117 million on the street. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says that's what they found in the trailer of a commercial truck that was trying to cross the Camino Real International Bridge in Eagle Pass, Texas on Sunday. The truck was only supposed to be hauling a drying agent for piglets, but a canine unit sniffed out the drugs. Homeland Security Investigations is now investigating. The owner of an Illinois trucking company is facing federal charges for allegedly helping people cheat on the written portion of the commercial driver's license exam. Prosecutors say the owner of Maximum Services, Michaela Dotkin, used electronic communication devices to relay test answers over a period of about 3 years. In Illinois, CDL applicants take the written portion of the test on a computer and are allowed to listen to the questions via headphones. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Dotkin used this to his advantage by concealing a listening device inside the headphones, connecting with them by phone, and giving them the right answers in real time as the test was taking place. Court documents suggest that Dotkin and his accomplices charged at least $500 for their help to cheat on the exam. Dotkin is charged by information rather than by a grand jury indictment. That usually means a guilty plea is coming. California is pumping the brakes on Waymo's plans to expand in the Golden State. The robo-taxi company has asked regulators for permission to expand services in parts of Los Angeles and San Francisco, but a notification on the California Public Utilities Commission website stated that the application had been suspended for further staff review. That suspension runs until mid-June. The decision comes amid quite a bit of resistance to the autonomous taxis in California, following a number of crashes involving not just Waymo vehicles, but Cruise robo-taxis as well. Convoy is back. The digital freight broker shut down in October before being acquired by the logistics tech company Flexport 1 month later. And now this week, Flexport said in a news release that it's relaunching the Convoy platform, offering up full truckload services for carriers to book loads from vetted shippers and brokers with 24/7 access to the Convoy load board and same-day or next-day pay options. New Mexico State Police recently wrapped up a 9-day commercial enforcement blitz. It happened in and around the city of Clayton through hundreds of inspections. Police say they ended up issuing nearly 250 citations. A total of 63 commercial vehicles and 30 drivers were forced out of service for critical violations. And finally, registration is now open for OOIDA's Truck to Success seminar. It runs for 3 days starting October 22nd in Blue Springs, Missouri. There's also an option for attending via Zoom. Truck to Success features trainers both from OOIDA and elsewhere who provide a comprehensive course in what it takes to become and succeed as an owner-operator. Attendees are typically company drivers or leased-on owner-operators who want to make the transition, and even existing owner-operators who might be struggling to make ends meet. The deadline to register for Truck to Success in person is October 1st. The deadline to register to attend by Zoom is October 21st. Participants who register before September 1st will receive $50 off, plus a 1-year membership to OOIDA for free. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Ralphie Bogue of Huntingburg, Indiana. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 38 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 285 years without causing a single accident. Next, Scott Thompson discusses surveys on detention time and freight rates with Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation. We'll get the latest on FMCSA's speed limiter proposal from Jami Jones and Mark Schremmer of Landline Magazine, and I'll discuss truckers who see it as a job versus a career with Marty Ellis of the Spirit of the American Trucker. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Stock up on Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have Howe's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, Howe's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit howesproducts.com.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now. 855-976-4291.
Buckling up keeps everyone safe on the roads. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by FMCSA.
Landline Now, welcome back. The OOIDA Foundation is out with two brand new surveys, one on detention time and another on freight rates. Both are thorough and both are important for a variety of reasons. And Andrew King, the Foundation's Assistant Director, is here to explain why. Andrew, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. As always, we always learn something new every time you grace us with your presence here. We're going to take these surveys one by one here. We'll do our best to kind of summarize them because, as I said, they are quite thorough. They are quite extensive.
Yes.
We got a lot of information here to parse through. Let's start with the 2023 survey on detention time, a problem, as we know, that weighs down the industry in a number of ways. You got responses from more than 250 OOIDA members to compile all this data. Let's start with, I guess, the most obvious and basic question here is how much time were the respondents spending on average waiting to load or unload each week?
Yes, and we actually did something a little bit different to give an actual number rather than in previous surveys. We've kind of given just a bucket or a range of hours. And for loading time, it was 7.2 hours per week. And then for unloading time, it was 7.1 hours. So adding that together, our average member is spending approximately 14.3 hours every week in detention, which is quite considerable when you think of the hours of service regulations, which is why this is really problematic. I mean, it's problematic in other ways, but when you only have 60, 70 hours of driving time and you're losing driving time being stuck and how that can trickle down and just affect everything.
Yeah, it really does, and we've obviously talked about this in recent months about this issue, and it seems like there's more attention to it now, and hopefully we'll get better results in the future when you do this survey. We were talking earlier, looking at that, 14.3, I think it was, right? The average there. That's actually down a little bit compared to recent years, but you have to take the pandemic into consideration there.
Yes, and that is a very interesting finding, probably to me anyway. When I look at this survey, that was the most interesting thing, is that in 2020 and 2021, the average time spent in detention was 16.1 hours, I believe. So it's a little bit of a reduction, about 11% lower, and then it's even 4.7% lower than it was in 2022. So that is a good sign, but obviously 14 hours is still a lot of time. So it's nice that it dropped, but it's still a major issue.
And one thing I thought was interesting, again, you ask so many questions in this survey, and it really does paint a pretty good picture of what the problem is out there. One thing I found interesting was that a vast majority of the people who responded to the survey kind of took issue with the way detention time is defined, right? Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, and that's always been a really hot button issue. So 90% were in disagreement with the traditional definition, which I'm not exactly sure how that became the definition. We believe that it had something to do back with deregulation in 1980. But basically, there's this idea that detention doesn't start until after you're there for 2 hours. And so that's what, like in the OIG report, they called it dwell time. And, to think that you're giving away 2 hours basically for free. No job in the world does that except for trucking.
You sound defeated there, Andrew.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Now, and our members are fair. They'll write, because we ask them to expound on this and give them the option to kind of put in like an open text question, right? And a lot of them are reasonable in that some things do take a little time to load, unload, and they expect that to an extent. But when it becomes even more than 30 minutes or an hour and you don't hold true to your appointment times, that's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, there are such things as, money makers. This is quite literally a money loser, as you kind of point out there. One thing I thought was interesting too, and again, we're just kind of going through these one by one here, but I think it was about half of those who responded here said they do try to get paid, right, for detention time.
Yes.
Some do, but overall, most of them don't here, which again,
they
is
at
part
least
of the
try. 49% always attempt to receive compensation, and I believe It's more around 11, 12% that don't receive it at all. And then, but the thing to remember is even though some do get it, they don't receive it for all the loads that they haul, and they're not getting nearly what they believe they should be getting paid. So like for owner-operators, the average detention time pay would work out to about $53 an hour. But again, if that's not starting right away and you're not always getting that every time, and even that does not possibly cover the expense of, you might have missed a load because you were stuck.
Yeah, you couldn't, yeah.
So that, it's not really compensating for all the things that they're losing.
So I think you and I and everybody listening here probably understands the problem with this, the issue, and just how big a problem it is. You do name some names here in terms of shippers and receivers who are kind of notorious for not valuing a truck driver's time. I don't know if you want to get into that necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, they're usually the same.
Yeah.
We ask a question of what's the top 3 shippers and receivers that give you problems. Walmart, for both categories, is always number 1.
Shocking, yeah.
Yeah, very shocking.
Yeah.
And then it's usually the same other carriers. They might just switch between number 2 and number 3 here and there. But, your typical culprits are like Tyson, Americold, Target, Cisco. I mean, they're those big, well-known chains. And
those names are not going to surprise many people out there.
Exactly.
Real quick here before we move on to the freight rate survey, just in terms of understanding the problem, which this helps us do quite a bit, solutions, are there ideas out there that you got from people about maybe how to make the situation any better? It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a hard thing. I mean, the two that come up the most probably when we ask this question is ELDs. I mean, people don't like ELDs, obviously, but they can use it to their advantage in that they can track detention time. The other thing is making it mandatory on like the bill of lading, where you put in the in and out time so that you have that documentation. And then, of course, having some form of accountability for shippers and receivers, because basically, you're just a free warehouse for them.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to make them hurt somewhere in their pocketbook, obviously, is the biggest thing. So something along those lines is what they envision.
All right. We'll move from the overwhelmingly optimistic detention time survey to the freight rate survey. I say that sarcastically because, as we know, 2023, not really a great year for rates, I should say. Anyone listening to this right now knows that all too well. You heard back on this survey from a couple hundred respondents. Since we kind of know what the numbers are from 2023 as a whole, what are you looking for from this survey in particular? What was the goal here? Or what is the goal, I guess?
I guess it's really just to know what's going on out on the road from our members' perspective, and especially for owner-operators and leased-on owner-operators. We've been sharing now for a while our monthly market update and our quarterly market update, and those are nice and they're helpful, but they're kind of broad, and they're usually taking it from a large carrier perspective or contract rate perspective, and that doesn't always fit our members. And so hearing directly from them is always the goal, and to see how that kind of matches up with other things that we see out there. And of course, as you kind of mentioned, it does match up very well. Obviously, there was decrease in rates per mile and per trip. And that was across the board, every type of operation, no matter what you were pulling or hauling. Basically, everyone was seeing a decrease, some more than others, but that was kind of the message from the survey.
Can you kind of run through those numbers real quick for us?
Yeah, just a couple. For owner-operators under their own authority, when it comes to per mile pay, they dropped 15% to $2.50 in 2023. That was the highest per mile pay for all the different types of operation. But that was still 18% higher than 2019, which is kind of matching up with other things. And $2.50, that's higher than what we see DAT reporting for van and flatbed and reefer. So that is, while it's not the greatest, I imagine our members tend to do maybe better than the average driver out there or carrier, and that just kind of highlights that. For company drivers, they decreased pay per mile by 11%, dropping down to 64 cents per mile. And then looking at overall pay, that decreased 18% from $2.56 in 2022 to $2.09 in 2023.
Yeah, not great overall,
No.
as we already knew kind of there.
No.
We talk all the time about cost of operations. Knowing what your cost of operations is really the first step to weathering a storm like we've been seeing over the past, whatever it is, year or two. With that in mind, it was somewhat disappointing for me to see that the percentage of people who know their cost of operations actually went down last year.
Yes, that is discouraging. It's kind of disappointing, and shocking, really, because it was around 90%. It dropped down to 82%, which is still significant, but yet that drop is also significant. But the good takeaway, and this is something that helps us because we're always preaching about the importance of cost of operations and what it can do to help you. And now we have data to really show that, as same with other surveys. But one good note is that the cost of operating did drop about 30 cents from $2.38 to $2.08, which is positive, but it's still really high. But the one thing that really stands out is that those who knew their cost of operations make 67 cents more per mile, or $715 more per trip.
That's significant.
That's really significant.
Yeah.
And so that really helps us in our messaging on why it's so important to know this. I imagine for some it's like, oh, why do I need to do this? And it's such a hassle. But it can pay dividends in just knowing what you need to make. And people, I think, who track this are also probably a little better about negotiating as well.
Yeah, that would make sense. As I said earlier, both these reports and this one also are just, chock full of information, numbers. A lot of valuable information, helpful information for people out there. You talked about this kind of surprising you, maybe the cost of operations. Anything else that stands out to you here that maybe you think people should know out there about what you found out about freight rates?
Those are really the big ones. Okay. Obviously, a reduction in loads, reduction in miles traveled, especially when we removed fleet owners from the equation. And there was even a slight reduction in deadhead miles, which that's always a good thing. But there was a pretty significant reduction in loaded miles, which just basically shows, again, that demand has waned, and so there aren't as many loads out there to haul, and that's really impacting our members.
It's going to be interesting, too, when we look ahead to this year, 2024, maybe a year from now when you're looking at this, to see where we stand there, because as we've talked about, hopefully this is the year that things start to turn around.
Oh, absolutely. It was interesting looking back at the previous year's survey because there was some hope, some optimism that things would change relatively quickly. And it's kind of interesting to think that was kind of the consensus of people in general. Even some of the freight economists, they're thinking that this freight recession would come back really quickly. We'd snap out of it. And that definitely
has not been the case.
And so it's interesting, making these predictions for 2024 and seeing exactly what you said, how they play out and if they do. So there is some optimism looking forward into the year, but it's going to be a slow progress.
Real quick here, Andrew, as we wrap things up, Truck to Success coming back this October. What can you tell us? Yes.
So the registration is already available. It's going to take place October 22nd through the 24th, and we're super excited for this. And we're having some extra specials for those who sign up early, or even those who sign up at Matt's or at the truck, where they'll have $100 off. But we're really, really looking forward to having this and seeing everybody again. And, of course, we'll hold it in person and also via Zoom. So I'm sure that we'll have more to say about this in the future, where we can talk in more detail about what to expect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cost of operations, if you want to figure out how to do that.
The
seminars for that. It's for everything and more in between. So we'll talk about that over the coming months. Andrew, a pleasure as always. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You can check out these surveys and any number of reports from the OOIDA Foundation on their website, ooida.com/foundation. I'm Scott Thompson. This is Landline Now, and we're back in a moment.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to Prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Loadboard Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Loadboard Pro.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome to the show. Scott Thompson here, joined in Studio A by our friends from Landline Magazine, Jami Jones and Mark Schremmer, which can mean many things, I guess. But in this case, it means we're going to put our heads together to discuss some of the biggest stories in trucking this week. Jami, Mark, good to see you.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Let's start with the Drive Act. We've talked about this quite a bit over the past year or so. This is that piece of legislation in the House and actually the Senate now as well. But we're talking about the House one today. It was introduced last year by Representative Josh Brecheen of Oklahoma, which would bar FMCSA from imposing a speed limiter mandate. We've got a couple new developments here, courtesy mostly, I think, from OOIDA, which is asking the House GOP to pass it before passing a CRA resolution of disapproval. Forget the name. It's not really important. But basically, OOIDA is asking the House here to make this a priority because now really is the time to get this done, Mark.
Yeah, the first thing to make this as simple as possible is OOIDA and most truckers out there want to stop mandatory speed limiters. FMCSA has been pushing this. We're expecting a notice of proposed rulemaking with a top speed to come out in May, is what the schedule. Obviously, that's been delayed many times, and the Drive Act is out there. It's in the House and in the Senate, trying to stop it. Basically, the bill would just take authority away from FMCSA to go forward with any rulemaking that would mandate speed limiters on heavy-duty trucks. Now, the reason it's so important right now to do it is we also have this issue with worker classification going out. The Department of Labor recently put out a new independent contractor rule. There's a lot of House Republicans that are against it for various reasons, and they're considering putting out a CRA, a resolution to basically repeal it and to go back to the Trump-era rule on worker classification. OOIDA is fine with that rule for the most part, but there was one issue with it that basically included in it gives, leased-on carriers the ability to force independent contractors to have speed limiters on their trucks. And so basically what OOIDA is saying, hey, before you do that, go ahead and pass the Drive Act, get that completely off the table, because that is something, doesn't work. And most of the people that are for the Drive Act or that are for the worker classification repeal are also for the Drive Act, which do not want speed limiters on trucks. So just want those things to kind of mesh and connect and come together, and the time is now to do it.
It's a lot of cart before the horse kind of things. This is just the most logical path forward to stopping speed limiters. And the one thing that, to back up and really stress, typically when the agency moves forward on a regulation, it's because Congress mandated that they do so. Speed limiters, that's not the case. FMCSA basically went rogue on this one and is trying to mandate it on their own without a congressional directive. So that's why we're seeing significant pushback with the Drive Act and more co-sponsors, jumping on that because, typically Congress sets the stage for the regulatory roadmap, if you will, and this one's completely off. So, that's why it's easy right now even to get your lawmakers' attention and let them know not only is the agency doing this, they're doing it without the congressional directive that they normally have. So, it's basically like the kids when they're staying out after curfew. So let's just go ahead and, rein them in, ground them.
Take the car keys.
Yeah, you're not going to do this. So, that's really what needs to happen. So fightingfortruckers.com, go there, get your lawmakers to sign on to the Drive Act because we have to put the heat on and get this done right now.
Well, yeah, and as I'm looking at the bill right now, H.R. 3039 is the name of it. We've got 34 co-sponsors, which seems
respectable.
Respectable, but clearly nowhere near where it needs to be. This, as you mentioned there, Mark, really is a time to turn the heat up because the timeline is going to come quick. May is going to come very quick. I mean, we're talking 2 months basically until then. So the more heat that you can put on your lawmakers to put heat on FMCSA and get some momentum behind this, it's really going to be important. So,
the whole message needs to be there's power in numbers. And that's numbers of people calling and writing their lawmakers to get them to sign on as co-sponsors. There's power in the number of co-sponsors because I don't think I'm telling anybody anything they don't know, but nothing's really happening in Congress right now.
What?
So,
newsflash.
We really need a big showing on this one, and that's in the form of co-sponsors. So if we're going to beat this before May, we got to get on it now.
Yeah, and absolutely. We've talked about this so many times before, but reach out, explain what this would do for you, what this would do for safety, first and foremost.
Share your war stories, man.
Share your stories. Make it personal. Don't make it personal, but share your personal stories of experiences out there, and it really does go a long way. So hopefully this gains some traction here, and we'll, of course, update you on how that looks and what happens there. Let's move on to a move out of FMCSA, not speed limiters, but something else. They are now actively gathering information and feedback about lease purchase agreements. We've got this truck leasing task force, which we've talked about before. It's providing some really great insight, I think, into the problems that we're seeing out there with lease purchase agreements. And now the agency is asking for more information from basically anybody out there, for those who have gone through a lease purchase agreement, those who may be in one right now. They're looking for information. They're looking for documents. They're looking for pretty much anything that can kind of help them understand what some of the problems may be. It's going to be an interesting development to see what comes out of this.
Well, and I think we need to start back. This is congressionally mandated.
Yes.
So this is one of those things that the agency really didn't have a choice but to do. And it is a very important one because there are so many lines blurred when it comes to lease purchase agreements. And this is definitely a unique comment period. It is very short. We'll see if that sticks because they're asking for a lot of information. And a lot of this information that they have is actually financially, it's financial private information. Yep. It's proprietary, company information, even from an owner-operator perspective or a small business perspective. So there's definitely a different way that you'll have to submit those documents. And we have that detailed on landline.media because clearly you don't want your financials submitted on a public docket for everybody to review.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Yeah, please don't.
That's not at all what they want. They want to collect it. There's a way to mark it so that it's treated very differently and privately. The appropriate people, they'll take the data from it, and then that'll be it. This is not where your dirty laundry is going to be shared everywhere because, unfortunately, when it comes to lease purchases, the number of bad stories out there far outweighs the good. And so there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be potentially embarrassed to share this information. Yeah. Let's remember, lease purchases for the most part are predatory business models. You were a victim. You were not necessarily a willful participant in because they probably lied in the marketing aspect of it and ruined you, your business, maybe even your family's finances.
Well, and bringing it to light, too, is going to prevent other people from hopefully falling into this trap here. And you've been following the Truck Leasing Task Force meetings, Mark, and I've been listening as well. There have been so many stories out of that and so many really good questions raised as well from that. And again, it seems like they're working towards some sort of consensus agreement. I'm not sure what it is, but some sort of move here that is going to rein in these predatory practices.
Yeah, you certainly hope so because you hear all of the horror stories, and I know they've brought up these even the ones that they think that they've made it to the finish line and think, okay, I'm down to my last payment, and then all of a sudden they find out some maintenance fees
$30,000.
Yeah, they didn't even know about that.
It is Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many right there at the finish line, and Lucy's yanking the football away, and the lease purchase.
A $30,000 football or a truck or whatever the metaphor
it's
is.
It's just yanked away, and there you are. You're face planting.
I mean, think of it like this. I always say in a casino, the house always wins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the way this game is set up now on most of these lease purchase. The carrier is probably going to win at the end of the day. That's the way the game is stacked up. All the things they have it worked out in a way for them to win. If not, this was a really good point at one of the recent meetings. It was saying, if this was really, that they were trying to help some person, be an entrepreneur and start their own business, why would they be creating competition? Why would they be trying to help? So the reality is they're have an employee and they are letting that employee pay for the truck.
Well,
that's the...
Yeah, the other way of looking at it is if you don't turn a single mile, you sit at the house. The company's still making money off your back because you're in that lease purchase agreement. That's a fixed cost. It doesn't change no matter what happens. So if the company's still making money when you're not, you're in a bad situation.
This information collection request runs through mid-March. So again, if you've had a bad experience, you've been taken advantage of, we'd encourage you to let them know, essentially, what happened, again, to help prevent this from happening to other people.
Well, and the thing is, this is a different process on commenting, so even those who are familiar with it, if you need help, do not hesitate to call OOIDA because it is a very different animal this time, and we do want to help you to protect your private information.
And also, they mentioned at the last meeting they're expecting their next meeting to be held at Matt's in Louisville. So
if there's
anybody that's going to Matt's, and you have experience with this, please go and tell your story.
They need to hear these, quite frankly, horror stories to hopefully fix it, fix the situation there. We don't have a whole lot of time. I did want to talk about the Prove It Act. It's a new bill in the House. It's aimed at protecting small businesses from burdensome regulations, something owner-operators and our listeners and readers are quite familiar with. This would essentially put the onus on federal agencies to keep the little guy in mind when putting these regulations into effect. The optimistic part of me, this is bipartisan already.
Yeah.
The optimistic part of me thinks this is really common sense legislation that should take hold. We'll see where it goes, but I assume you guys are optimistic too, or hopefully maybe?
Anytime you see a bipartisan effort, I mean, you just instantly, especially in this political climate.
Exactly.
We're almost talking unicorn level stuff here when you start talking about bipartisan efforts in this Congress. So, kudos to them for putting this together. I actually fell in love with the second that I saw the name of it, Prove It. I was like, there you go. Because there are mechanisms in place to protect small businesses through the regulatory process. But when you start looking at the definitions of small businesses, it's scary. I mean, it's like multi-million dollars, hundreds of employees, depending on what definition of small business they want to use. And here we are in a world of one man or woman with their one truck,
it's a different league.
Yeah, it's just totally. Hopefully, you're hitting some, decent six-figure income, but who knows? And at the end of the day, it's just like I feel like true small mom and pop businesses have been left in the cold by a lot of the protections in Congress or in law currently.
Mark?
Yeah, and this is, this is encompassing to all industries, but especially in trucking. You think of how many of the regulations that are cooked up, so many times they're coming from ATA.
Yeah.
And why is ATA pushing for these? Because to try to push down the small business, their competitor.
Yeah.
And so this is why this is important, and I'm glad to see OOIDA, latching onto this and supporting it, and hopefully all the members will as well.
H.R. 7198. This is a new piece of legislation.
The Prove It Act.
The Prove It Act. So keep an eye on that.
Easy to remember, too.
Absolutely. Jami, Mark, pleasure as always. We'll see you again next time.
See ya.
Yeah, thanks.
Our thanks to Jami Jones and Mark Schremmer of Landline Magazine, who, along with the rest of the team at the magazine, are keeping tabs on all the latest news out of the trucking industry. You can check out their work for yourself on landline.media and in every issue of the magazine. We've got a break to take, but stick around. Landline Now is back right after this.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Do you view trucking as a job or a career, or is it more of a lifestyle to you? While we've talked with many truckers who view their profession as a lifestyle, we've also talked over the years with many who see it as a job. Marty has seen both kinds as well, and he's seeing a real generation gap between new and old truckers.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
Doing great, thank you. Where are you at right now?
I'm at the Petro in Beaumont, Texas. It's got 275 parking spots, 13 showers, a Black Bear diner, and I'll be here the 23rd through the 25th.
Okay, well, fantastic. Wanted to talk to you about a couple of topics here, and one that you were talking about earlier is just people, whether they have the passion for the industry like they did in the past. What are you hearing from folks out on the road?
A lot of folks that come in really feel that they're, the new, not generation as far as age goes, but the new group of truck drivers, because they can be coming in this industry at 60 and some coming in at 21. So it just seems like that passion is gone. And one of the folks that I talked to had brought up that word, the passion for truck driving and the trucking industry and that. And I guess I hadn't really thought about the passion of it. And I think that person was right. I think that they kind of hit the nail on the head. There's folks that you can really feel the passion no matter they've been out here 6 months or if they've been out here for 50 years. And, I see that, when we have the board meeting and the people on the board there at OOIDA, most of those folks have that passion. And you really see that, and you hear it. And every once in a while, when I have folks come in the trailer, I really get excited when I have people that are really passionate about the industry as a whole, their business as a whole, as their little group of it. But when I get the young ones that come in, and I'm getting older, so I guess not everybody's younger, but there's a lot of people that are a lot younger. And when I get a young person come in, and I had one the other day out in Tonopah, stop in. She had, I think she's been in the industry for 11 months. She's totally excited about it. She has that passion. She loves trucking. And she, I believe, is going to make a difference in this industry. And so when I talk to people like that, I really get excited. It's like, hold it, there could be a future here that has that passion, because too many, I think right now, don't have that passion. They look at this more of a job and something they can just collect a paycheck and go home and not worry about it. And there's so many of us that either grew up on a farm or ranch or just got into trucking young, or they had somebody in their family young, where they were learning this, and that's how they got the passion. And so when I see it in the young folks now, it's like, hey, maybe there is, some promise out there, and we're just not being able to get around some of those young ones that have that passion. And I find it at the truck shows too. You really find a lot of that, and it just makes a body feel a little bit better that, there are people out there. And maybe we as older, more experienced drivers out here really need to keep our eyes and ears open for them and see what we can do to help them progress in their career.
It's interesting. You mentioned that you do see a lot of that passion at the truck shows. That kind of makes sense to me, Marty, because someone that's really passionate is going to go to an event like that. And if it's just a job, I would think that wouldn't be something that would really attract you.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that they figure it's just a job. They would never go to a trucking event like that, whether it's Mid-America or some of the smaller shows that we go to out here. And the smaller shows, you get a lot more personal because you have a little more time with more people. At Mid-America, you know how it goes. It gets kind of hectic and you don't have the time to devote to each person that you'd like to. So, yeah, and so that's part of it. And part of it is just the people that are going to the shows really love what they're doing, and they want to show it to everybody else.
Well, there you go. Well, something else that you had brought up that I think is a pretty important topic is what people do when they get hurt or sick out on the road. And obviously, this is something that I would think everybody at some point is going to encounter, if not getting hurt, definitely. I mean, we all get sick sometime. I'm curious, Marty, if you have some advice about that.
Well, it's kind of near and dear and, fairly fresh in my my mind. But it's that I think everybody needs to set up some sort of plan. And I know that's hard. And, whether it's the planning, if you get hurt or sick or, God forbid you died out on the road, your family really needs to know some of the ins and outs of all that. And some drivers out there have separate, checking accounts and things like that. But we need to know that there's somebody there at home that can access those if we're not around. Also, what's the plan of getting that driver home? Do you have the money to put somebody on a plane? Do you have the ability to, take some time off from your job and go get them? There's so many different, areas that you can kind of look at, but I personally think that conversation needs to be had early. We have, I guess now we have a plan here, and either Todd or Louie will get a phone call. If something happens, luckily when it happened for me, both of them were out there, and it would just we kind of pivoted and were able to get the truck home safely and in a timely manner. And so it worked out well, but it kind of just reminds you that you need to have some sort of plan in place. And I always encourage our owner-operators to have some sort of insurance. Some of the guys just can't do the health insurance. I get it. Some of the premiums are crazy, but especially like an accident plan, the occupational accident. Yes, this is a, kind of a promo for ours, but you can get it anywhere. But make sure that they're going to be backing up that insurance policy. And I was able to meet a gentleman, I think it's been about a year ago, that actually had to use the one that we offer. And he was telling me how well it went. And he had that catastrophic accident, and he was in the hospital for quite a while. But he had something in place where he didn't end up losing everything. And so that's really important, and it's an important gift to give your loved ones. I mean, to have that just in case scenario set up.
Absolutely. And, I would think, too, you'd want to have a list for your loved ones of, where you make your truck payment, where your insurance payment goes, all that kind of stuff that has to be done on a regular basis in case you're not able to.
Absolutely. And have it in an area where maybe it's a fireproof box or fire and waterproof box or something like that. So in case there's a catastrophe at home, you don't lose all that information.
Yep. Well, Marty, we've run out of time here, but real quick, where are you headed to next?
After Beaumont, I will be at the Petro in Hammond, Louisiana on the 27th and the 28th, and then the Petro in Ocala, Florida, on the 1st and 2nd of March.
Well, fantastic, Marty. Take care.
All right. Appreciate it, Marty.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.